Today I'm going to talk about the dramatic form, which has been around since Aristotle. Aristotle in the Poetics said that these principles have been around for centuries, unknown how many centuries, and so they were old in Aristotle's time. Well, of course, this notion of the dramatic form is very ancient. Stories have been told in a dramatic form forever. We find folk tales and myths and so on from very ancient times are in this form. The one I'm going to talk about today, the story that I'm going to use as an example, Cinderella, appears all over the world in different forms, very closely related to each other, and I guess is continued to be sold and told today. And many Harlequin romances are Cinderella in another form. Okay, so the dramatic story is dependent on dramatic characters. And one of the things about dramatic characters are that they're well orchestrated. In other words, the main characters are far different from each other in temperament, intelligence, background, and so on. It makes for a far more interesting story. Orchestration is a very important element of fiction. So in my story, the main characters are the prince, who comes from a castle, is highborn, rich, and the other main character, Cinderella, is poor, sleeps in the ashes of the fireplace, and is poor. So they're well orchestrated. He's high in society, she's low in society. He's a very important person with a guaranteed future, and she's a nobody. So good orchestration. They're opposites. So where does Cinderella start? Well, when it's told in various incarnations, it's told that it starts in the world of the everyday. Well, in the world of the everyday, Cinderella has lost her mother. She's been living with her father, and she's been quite happy. And so her problems in that world of the everyday are slight. Cooking dinner, and she's taking over her mother's role, and taking care of the animals. And so then something happens in the world of the everyday to change it. And this change, when we're talking about the dramatic form, this change is called the inciting incident. And it hits right here, and it drives the story up to another plateau. Right? You can look at plot. This is the inciting incident is plot point number 1. A plot point is something that happens in the lives of the characters that changes everything, sends the story off in another direction. So what happens here, she's in the world of the everyday, pretty happy, struggling to keep up with the chores because her mother's deceased. When her father comes home with a wicked stepmother. This is the inciting incident. Yep, or plot point number 1. Plot point number 1 is the inciting incident, and it puts the story in another level. And what is the inciting incident? The father comes home with the wicked stepmother. Okay, now Cinderella has to deal with the wicked stepmother. Okay? And she's made to sleep in the ashes, and she's denigrated, and she's yelled at, and abused, and whipped, and she's in a bad way. But, you see, this is a story about Cinderella who's pure at heart and doesn't hold a grudge. Poor woman. Poor Cinderella. Yeah, so she forgives, but life's pretty miserable for her. Okay? Then, plot point number 2. And like all plot points, it changes everything. Sends the story off in a whole new direction. And what happens? What is this plot point? They get invited to the ball. Not Cinderella, of course. She can't go because she's ugly and lives in the ashes. So this puts us on another plateau. And on this plateau, the ugly stepsisters are getting all fixed up to go to the ball because it's been announced that the prince is going to pick a young lady to marry at the ball. Ooh, ooh, ooh. And they want to marry the prince. But poor Cinderella. The reader, of course, has a lot of sympathy for poor Cinderella. Anyway, what happens is Cinderella helps to get her ugly stepsisters ready for the ball, and then they leave. You know, the wicked stepmother and the ugly stepsisters go to the ball, and that actually is a plot point because that changes everything. And Cinderella is home alone. You know, poor Cinderella. She's got to scrub the pots while her sisters goes off to the ball. And then we get a major plot point. In fact, let's call that the plot point. Well, who knows? What are plot points and what are just incidents? But I'd say it's a plot point when they leave for the ball. And then right after, there's a new plot point when the fairy godmother appears. Now, in an ordinary story that you'll probably be writing about contemporary characters or even historical characters, one of the principles of creative writing is that the hero and the heroine should solve their own problems. But this is a fairy tale, so it's okay. Fairy godmother comes in and solves the problem. Makes a pumpkin into a coach, makes mice into horses, and gives her a grand gown, and off she goes to the ball. That, of course, is another plot point. Now we're on the other plateau. She's told she has to come home. She has to leave by 12 o'clock because at 12 o'clock everything's going to revert to its normal state and she'll be sunk. But she gets all wrapped up in the ball, and she and the prince meet. Their eyes lock, their hearts beat fast, their faces go flush, they fall in love instantly, and she forgets the time. And then the clock starts to strike and she runs, leaving behind her glass slipper. Okay, now she's at home and we're on a new situation. Each time there's a new plateau, you might say, there's a new situation. And this, you know, there's a plot point, everything changes. Now she's having fallen in love, having met the prince, having rushed away at night, lost the slipper. Now she's home and the prince is looking for the owner of the slipper, and he sends his men out into the countryside to find her. Dum dum dum. Of course, we all know that the prince's men come to the house, find Cinderella, and we're now on a new plateau where they meet and they are married. This, of course, is the climax. The climax, there's a scene before the climax that is called the obligatory scene. It's one of these obligatory scenes. The obligatory scene is the scene where it's decided, is this going to end happily or not? You know, it's where the main story question, will she get together with the prince? And the answer is yes. So the obligatory scene is where that question is answered. The obligatory scene in an ordinary, like a, well, in any romance, the obligatory scene is where the couple decides to have a committed relationship. Once the decision is made, there may be obstacles to overcome. Those are the actions in what's called the climactic sequence. In a detective story, when the detective figures out who committed the murder, how he did it, and why he did it, and so on, or why she did it, that's the obligatory scene in a mystery. In a thriller, it's like the obligatory scene is, are they going to find the atom bomb? And the climactic sequence is diffusing it. You see? It's like, in any good dramatic story, you've got this central story question, will something happen? And that is answered in the obligatory scene, but the actions implied or that caused by the obligatory scene have not yet happened. Like, yeah, the heroine may decide, I am going to marry George, but George has left for the coast, and now we have to see if she can catch up to him and grab hold of him and stop him from leaving for New Zealand. You see, those are the actions that follow the obligatory scene. So in a dramatic story, that's where the conflicts are taking you, to the obligatory scene. And after the obligatory scene, you have the climactic sequence. What's really interesting about this, there's some, up until the obligatory scene, the good luck is on the side of the villain or the antagonist. Like, say, in a romance, if she's chasing after the guy and it's before the obligatory scene, she gets to the boat too late. In other words, the obstacles are on the side of, like, her father, who's trying to prevent them from getting together. Right? In a murder mystery, the gods, so to speak, or the fates are on the side of the killer. So, like, the killer has all the good luck and the hero has all the bad luck. The hero gets there just a little too late. The villain forgets he left his cigarette lighter, but goes back and picks it up just in time, and that kind of thing. It's like the fortunes of the antagonist and the protagonist change at the obligatory scene. After that, the hero arrives at the boat just in time, and you see, it's like now good fortune is on the side of the hero after the obligatory scene. So it's a very interesting thing, this dramatic form. There are people who, like me, who write about dramatic situations and drama and stuff, who think that this form, and once the reader sees what's up with this dramatic form, what the hero is after, what the obstacles are, where it's going, that alone creates suspense. You know, you don't really have to, you don't have to put in a lot of red herrings. This alone carries the reader to the end. Like in a romance, you set it up so that the hero and the heroine are in love, but they have obstacles. This alone will carry them to the end. Got a detective story, you got a murderer, you got a detective. This alone, this overcoming the obstacles towards that obligatory scene will do it. You don't need red herrings and all the kind of cheating kind of devices to get the reader to read to the end. They'll be gripped. See, so my idea is I'm going to do a series of these tapes, starting with the dramatic form here, and I'm going to do characters next, and then the mythic form, how to build suspense, several different kind of tapes for teaching the craft of writing. Sort of like teasers for my books. I'm hoping that people people will see these tapes and want to learn more, and will buy my books. They're doing well, but they could always do better, right? And of course, I do workshops, and I speak at writers' workshops around the country. I taught creative writing at UC Berkeley Extension for about 25 years, and also I was every year at the Swell Valley Writers Conference for, I don't know, 20 years. I was teaching there. So now I just do some private workshops, and occasionally I talk at a writers conference. But and now I decided I'm going to make these series of tapes. Hope you enjoy them, and hope you look for the others. You can go on my website, jamesandfrey.com, put your name on the mailing list, and I will alert you when I'm doing a writer's workshop. As far as these little discussions of craft, I hope to do 15 or 20 of them, so just keep watching YouTube. Thanks for watching this one, and hope to see you again. Well, hope you'll see me again. How about that?